Tyler, great to be with you, and this is obviously such a fun time with the NFL draft coming up here in 2 days, and a lot of talk about what the Patriots are going to do at number 4, and it seems as though the likely scenario is that they will take LSU's Will Campbell at number 4. How likely do you think that will be, and do you think ultimately this is a guy that can really help out the Patriots on the offensive line?
Yeah, it does seem like the dominoes are falling in that direction. You were hoping that Shedeur Sanders, the next quarterback next to Cam Ward, who's presumptive number 1 overall pick, would endear himself to the Cleveland Browns or the New York Giants, where then you have the opportunity for Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter to fall to you at number 4. It doesn't feel like that right now. Again, there's still some time between now and Thursday for things to kind of shake up a little bit, but right now it does feel like neither Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter will be available to the New England Patriots at number 4, which then turns you to Will Campbell. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Of course, we all know it fills arguably the biggest need on the roster. You can set him as your left tackle. And a lot has been made about the arm length and whether or not that can translate to the NFL. And, you know, I know that there's history that goes against this, but I think he's going to be fine. I ultimately do. You have to look at the player a little bit more than just the measurables sometimes. And this is a player that has been first team All-SEC over the last 2 years at LSU, playing up against premier prospects in the SEC that are going to be dominant in the NFL. If you don't put stock in that and you put stock in arm length, I kind of laugh at you a little bit because, you know, we get so in the weeds sometimes with the pre-draft process and trying to get into the nitty-gritties of these prospects. But overall, this dude can play. He seems to be a prototypical Patriot in terms of being able to be a good locker room guy along with producing on the field. So if it is Will Campbell, I think the Patriots are okay.
So you mentioned 2 other names there, in Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, and those are guys that I think many people from the Patriots side of things would say if they were available, you know, it would be great that they would be available, then they would probably take him. But you do mention with Will Campbell the aspect of, okay, this offensive line needs a ton of work, and this is a guy that could fill a void. So do you think if for whatever reason Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter were still available at 4, they would go that route and take them, even though knowing that they need to fill an offensive line spot that Will Campbell would ultimately be able to do?
Yeah, I think they should. And we know this, Joe. We've watched the Patriots over the last couple of years. They are so derived of talent that you can't be forced to draft for need. You need to bring in blue chip players. And in this draft, which has been talked about like not the most talented draft in recent years, unfortunately for the Patriots, because they're picking in the top 5, you want to bring in as much of a sure thing as humanly possible. And as well, I have faith in Will Campbell translating to the NFL, either as a left tackle or a starting left guard in this league. It is much more of a sure thing either with Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. So if one of them are on the board, I think you absolutely pounce. And I will say, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I had a mock draft to go up over the weekend, and I had the Cleveland Browns selecting Shedeur Sanders with the 2nd overall pick, because I look at that team and say, how can you not roll the dice on a quarterback, considering the situation that you put yourself in? Of course, Deshaun Watson is blown up in their face. He's now suffered a 2nd Achilles tear. We don't know if he's going to be available for the 2025 season. They have Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco. I don't know if that's someone you really want to go with in 2025. So I just look at that team in particular and say, how do you not seriously consider a quarterback? Now, if they don't like the prospect, they don't like the prospect. And when you have players like we're talking about in Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter who feel like so much of a sure thing, Abdul Carter could be a top 5 pass rusher in the NFL when he hits his prime. We don't even know what Travis Hunter could be when he hits his prime, talking about him in the same breath as Shohei Ohtani in MLB. So that when that's in your face and you're not sold on a guy like Shedeur Sanders, I can understand why you would not go at that position.
All right, I don't think a lot of fans are asking for the Patriots to draft this guy. It is a fun idea, though, Tyler, and I think you know who I'm going to bring up. It's Ashton Jeanty of Boise State, who was awesome last year as a running back, but you don't see running backs, especially in today's day and age, get drafted number 4 overall. How silly would it be for the Patriots to actually invest in this guy, even though I think we can both admit it'd be pretty fun?
Yeah, no, it would be fun, right? I mean, and you do need a go-to star option out of the backfield for Drake May at some point in his career. Ramondre Stevenson dealing with fumbles, Antonio Gibson, not necessarily that type of back. You put in Ashton Genty, you're like, okay, we're starting to play some fantasy football here in Foxborough. And you look at Mike Vrabel and his history with Derrick Henry in Tennessee, you start to really go, okay, maybe this works. But I just don't think the Patriots are at a point in their rebuild where you can bring in someone like Ashton Genty. Let's just use the Detroit Lions, for example. They really swung big when they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs a few years ago. I don't believe it was in the top 10. I believe it was 12 overall. They brought him in. But at the time, a lot of people were shaking their heads going, I don't know if this is the best fit for them. But where they were, and they were in their rebuild, they had the quarterback, they had the offensive line in particular. That was a cherry on top type of draft pick that they were able to do because they had everything already in place. And so if you're the Patriots, if you had an offensive line, if you had all of your answers along other areas of the roster, then okay, we can start entertaining that. I know that, it was talked about earlier a couple weeks ago that Colton Miller, the left tackle out of Las Vegas Raiders, could he be a trade target for the Patriots? Let's just play the hypotheticals. They went out and acquire him. Okay, that opens you up to go get a player like Ashton Genty or go best player available, not assessing for need. But because of where the Patriots are at, you need to get someone not just that has talent, but does fill a more pressing need outside of the running back position.
All right. Well, again, we can have some fun with it, at least a thought exercise for right now before we get to Thursday. Tyler, I think one question a lot of fans are asking is this draft going to be more the Mike Vrabel show, or is it going to be Eliot Wolf's show? What do you think it'll be here starting on Thursday?
I think it's going to be the Mike Vrabel show. And I think they kind of tipped their hand a little bit a couple of days ago when Mike Vrabel was doing the pre-draft press conference with reporters. It wasn't Eliot Wolf or Matt Groh of a couple of years ago or Nick Caserio. You go all the way back to the Belichick tenure. When we see Mike Vrabel front and center talking about the draft, I think that tells you who is pulling the strings here, and rightfully so. Again, he is someone who's coming in, he's going to command what roster he wants to coach. And so I think you've seen it in free agency. They've brought in Mike Vrabel guys. They've brought in guys that this coaching staff is familiar with, which is an extension of Mike Vrabel. So overall, yes, of course, Eliot Wolf and the rest of the front office will have their input. But when we're talking about final say, and not who, submits the pick or makes the call, but who is legitimately making the call, I think it's going to be Mike Vrabel's draft.
Yeah, that's obviously different than what we saw last year in the draft, and Patriots fans, rightfully so, hoping that this year's draft goes better than last year's draft, even though obviously the team took Drake May. Tyler, last thing for you. What are the biggest areas of need in your mind for this Patriots team to ultimately figure out and invest in terms of draft picks this year?
Well, first and foremost, and we talked about it, offensive line, right? I feel like we're going blue in the face as many times that we're on here, Joe, talking about the offensive line, but it is still a major need. Now, they have addressed it in the immediate. You bring in Bradbury at center. You bring in Morgan Moses at right tackle. You still need that left tackle. We'll see if that's Will Campbell. But I think that this is a draft where you double dip at the tackle positions. I think if you get Will Campbell, I don't think that stops you from trying to find your right tackle of the future, because Morgan Moses is a band-aid. He's not a long-term answer here. So the offensive line, still a massive need that they need to address. You look at edge rusher, that's another one. Again, we talked about Abdul Carter. I don't think he's going to be there for them, but that doesn't mean that you don't address it on day two, trying to find an edge rusher. And of course, wide receiver. Wide receiver has been the Achilles heel of this Patriots team at the draft for as long as I can remember. And they still need to have at-bats, still need to try to bring in someone who could have immediate talent. A guy that I like is Kyle Williams out of Washington State. I think that he's a home run hitter for this team that has been sorely lacking any sort of home run hitter. So to me, it's wide receiver, it's edge rusher, it's multiple positions along the offensive line, specifically left tackle. Those are the three areas that I'm looking at for New England. All
right, we've been talking about it now for weeks, even months, but now we're finally going to see it ultimately play out starting on Thursday. Tyler, appreciate the time as always, and looking forward to seeing how it shakes out. We'll talk to you after it all unfolds.